Welcome to the Freedom to Learn podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Gentles. This season, we're diving into what it means to return education to states, communities, and families. And we're exploring what becomes possible when education is freed from union dominance and federal control. Brian Jodice, National Press Secretary for the American Federation for Children, joins us today to share the results from a September National School Choice Survey. We delve into the details, but I want to emphasize three findings. Number one, the poll found that the majority of voters favor the federal scholarship tax credit. Number two, parents are particularly excited about the tax credit, with 66% of parents with kids in public schools in support. And number three, nearly 2/3 of voters favor their state opting into the federal scholarship tax credit, and that support extends across ideological lines. Brian previously served as the Executive Vice President of Parents for Educational Freedom in North Carolina. Stick around to hear him talk about North Carolina's impactful parent liaison team, and then tackle his favorite school choice myth, that school choice siphons money away from our traditional public schools. Brian Jodice, welcome to Freedom to Learn.
Jenny, excited to be here.
You've worked in the education freedom arena in a variety of roles, and I want to talk about your work in North Carolina and that state's school choice story. But let's start with a new poll from the American Federation for Children, which found that Americans strongly support school choice and will vote accordingly. Tell me about the poll. What's the top line finding there?
Yeah, it's really exciting. And look, obviously it's in line with positive results we've seen across the country as it relates to school choice. And polls are great to have in hand, but you can also just see the way families have moved with their feet too over the last 10 years, really over the last 5 specifically. We've just seen incredible groundswell. And I think it's why we're in position to not only see great results like this, but to see so many champion on the national level for the federal scholarship tax credit. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But here's sort of top lines of what the poll told us. We were in the field in early September, 1,000 registered voters. We actually weighted heavily for families that, had K-12 age students because you wanted a little oversampling to be able to hear from families that have kids, that are still in school. But here's sort of top line, and then we can kind of go as you want and talk about maybe some of the interesting findings we found. But 73% of voters believe school choice should be open to all families, very consistent with what we've seen in national polling over the last few years, including 55% who say it should be open to all regardless of income or geography. So this idea of regardless of income, what your zip code is, families should have access to school choice, still wildly popular. And it really is a political motivator. The majority of voters, 57%, would vote for a school choice candidate, while only 20% would go out of their way, to vote for an anti-school choice candidate. So, much higher returns there. And then we talked a lot about, different school choice options. And so we can jump into that as we go through the conversations, because we see some pretty interesting numbers as it relates to when you say things like education savings accounts or vouchers or private school choice. So we can talk about that when we get to it. But top lines also include, initial support for this new federal scholarship tax credit signed into law by the president through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act on the 4th of July, 58% in support among voters. And then when we told them a little bit more about it, so do one of those, here's what this is, 58% support it. Then you tell them a little bit more, jumps to 64%. And even among parents, support among parents was even higher. It was like 66% of sort of parents with school-age kids were in support of this idea. And so it really just shows that regardless of political party, people are in support of school choice. We've seen this. You've seen this in the work you've been doing, the conversations you've had here on this incredible podcast. We've seen more people moving in this direction. And this is not just a niche issue anymore. This is something that is wildly popular across the country.
Brian, I want to back it up all the way to the top of what you said. And you said that the findings show widespread support for school choice being open to all families. Yeah. So you and I have been around a while in the school choice world. We know what that means, but can you kind of break that out and the significance of that compared to the way we've approached school choice in the past?
Yeah, I think it's really significant. And one of the things we found too is, while voters are satisfied with their local schools, fewer than half would actually choose to stay there if given other options. So we've seen that play out. So you still have the vast majority of Americans who have their kids in traditional, traditional K-12 schools, what we call sort of public schools, but a lot of them would still look for other options. So we did ask about things. Here's some things I thought were pretty interesting. So we asked about things like open enrollment, education savings accounts, school voucher opportunity scholarships. So we tested, right, a lot of different ways in which you can talk about this. And obviously, open enrollment, very popular. You've probably seen this in the work you've done, right? This idea of you should be able to pick public schools to go to. It's popular. 77% of sort of Republicans that were identified in the poll liked open enrollment. Independents, 72% liked it. Democrats, 72% liked it. So everybody likes the idea of open enrollment. Education savings account, right? Sort of maybe the newest kind of school choice vernacular that we've introduced here over the last few years, really popular as well. So when we asked Republicans about education savings accounts, 74% were in approval of it. Pure independents, 66%. Even Democrats, 66% of lean and Democrats like open enrollment. And then minority Democrats, 72% on ESAs when you ask about education savings accounts.
Brian, we've got a whole new audience now that we're on the Ricochet network, and we're thrilled and we welcome them to Freedom to Learn. Can you explain what education savings accounts are?
Great question. And obviously, when we talk about school choice, there's different models and mechanisms to get us there, right? Obviously, we all know the sort of big idea of this is that families should be able to send their kids to the school that best meets their needs. Right? Find that environment that's going to best meet their needs. But to be able to do that in state legislatures and in state passed policies, there's been different vehicles. So for the longest time, right, vouchers, scholarships were the way in which to be able to do that. And that is, families get awarded a scholarship, they endorse it, it heads to the school in their kid's name. Same thing with tax credit programs. The way they're funded is different, right? Vouchers are funded through state funding. Tax credits funded through donors giving to scholarship granting organizations. But the mechanism, the way in which the money follows the kid to the school of their choice, very similar. North Carolina, we've got an opportunity scholarship program. Families get awarded that. They endorse it. Again, it goes within their kid's name to the school of their choice. Education savings accounts, really, when you talk about sort of putting dollars in a kid's backpack, we use this metaphor often in the movement and across education reform. We want to put the dollars in the kid's backpack to go with them where they want, but then to also be able to use for other educational expenses. And so that's what education savings accounts really are. More empowerment accounts, right? More spending accounts. It's not a traditional 529 where you can save that money and accrue any interest or use it for post-secondary, but it's a way in which dollars can be allocated towards a family, towards a student. And then they've got some freedom and flexibility, depending on how it's set up in their state, to then be able to use it for things like tuition, or maybe even some tutoring assistance, or maybe even some other educational needs. We've seen kids with special needs in North Carolina be able to use theirs, and in states across the country, use it for things other than just tuition. We've got a great example, a young lady who was a part of our campaign here in North Carolina to help us get special needs education savings accounts. And she's got this very rare disease where she can't speak. She has no auditory skills. It's called BPAN. She uses an iPad with her eyes to be able to speak. Her ESA was able to pay for that technology. Really incredible, right? Really amazing. So it's got some flexibility in the spending way in which families can use it for education.
Well, so no wonder there's widespread support
right.
once you explain what this is.
Yeah, but even when you peel back, all right, so vouchers for us has been a word we've always used, but there were times where voucher had a negative connotation, and we can obviously chalk up a lot of credit to the big influence of the big schooling teachers unions to try to make it seem like a dirty word, although it never was. Mm-hmm. But even when you ask about vouchers, 70% of the Republicans we asked automatic support, 56% of independents, so still a majority, even 51%. Look, not a big majority, but even a majority of Democrats liked it. And again, non-white, minority Democrats, 64% in favor of school vouchers. So it's not the dirty word that maybe it was or used to be. And more people, because we've done so much work to show what it really does, right, to empower families across the country, majority of folks still think it's a good idea.
Okay, so we're talking support. When you break down the individual types of school choice into the ESAs, the tax credit scholarships, the vouchers, the open enrollment, across parties, across the different types of options, support.
We've focused a long time at the American Federation for Children and across the school choice movement for years to ensure that those in the most need were able to get access to school choice programs, right? Obviously, a huge focus on low-income minority students, those who are trapped in a system that's no longer meeting their needs. They need that mobility. They need that equal access. They need that real game changer in their lives. And so we've always heard from minority communities saying, we love school choice. We want this idea. Poll after poll continues to resonate with that. And it shows it here. In fact, when we talk about the federal tax credit here in a minute, we'll show you just how much of those families also want to have access to this thing as well.
So we have historically supported vehicles that focused on students who are from low-income families, students with disabilities. There has been a shift in the movement towards a more universal approach, and your findings support that direction.
Yep. Majority of voters that we polled are all in support of this idea of sort of universal school choice. Again, we've known this by just talking to people, right? And the work that we've done, you and I, and this greater movement, the best part of our job, and I would tend to think that you agree with me, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. The best part is being able to go visit with families that could be or that have been impacted by this, right? Because then the partisan divides really come down, right? We've sat and and not just focus groups, but we've just sat at schools or even at kitchen tables with parents. And they really, Republican, Democrat, Independent, none of that really matters when it comes down to, we just want our kid to be able to find the environment that's the best fit for them. But by creating more universal policies across the country, you've also then seen people say, yeah, we like that. We want more of that.
Yeah, Brian, I would say the absolute best part is hearing from the beneficiaries of the programs when they grow up. Like that, that's a big thing with AFC, American Federations for Children, has the fellows. So these are young people who've benefited from scholarship programs.
One of the first assignments I got put on when I moved back to North Carolina in 2016 was we were doing a parent information session about opportunity scholarships. And we got to meet this young man named Amori Brown. He was in the 4th or 5th grade at the time, just a little kid. And now he's all the way through high school, into college, making his way through college. He's become a fellow at the American Federation for Children. So to watch him grow up through this whole program, and his story is incredible. I mean, his mom was awarded an opportunity scholarship. Our parent liaison team called him. She hung up because she didn't think it was real. She thought it was too good to be true. She hung up, and we had to call her back and say, hold on. This is a real thing. Like, you guys qualified, you're going to get this scholarship. It's changed his life.
Yeah, I actually had someone who benefited from a scholarship program, a privately funded scholarship program that I helped launch in Canada, in Ontario, reach out to me. So this young adult who's now working in school choice advocacy in Canada, who was one of the first beneficiaries. And I'd say it made my day, but it was like more than that, like made my month.
Well, we've been saying every state will have school choice soon. Hey, our friends to the north deserve it as well, too.
Every state and some provinces, if they get their acts together. But what you're talking about when you say every state will have school choice soon is the American Federal Scholarship Tax Credit.
Formerly known as the Educational Choice for Children Act, and now we've been referring to as the Federal Scholarship Tax Credit. And, it really is incredible. And I don't know that anyone's covered it more than you have here on this podcast and talked about it at length. And it really is amazing to think about where we came from. If you go back to President Trump in the 45th iteration of our presidency and the groundwork that was laid then by then Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos and senators like Ted Cruz still there today to really start pushing for this idea of, look, we've made a lot of incredible progress in states across the country. We've seen more school choice programs, nearly 20 universal school choice programs in over 30 states. We've seen a lot of great work there, but there are still places where families can't get access to anything like this. And what can we do? What can we do from a national standpoint to be able to create more access like this? So this idea of this, tax credit, Florida style tax credit from a national standpoint that could help bring school choice to all 50 states started developing then. And then obviously when 47 comes along and you just get more incredible momentum. You've been talking about it for the last year, but really last half of years to what this was going to look like in the reconciliation package. And there were a lot of really good pieces of the Educational Choice for Children Act that unfortunately had to get sort of pushed to the side as we went through the political process of getting this done. But a real kudos and a lot of attention goes to the president for championing this so much. And obviously Senator Cruz out of Texas for just fighting tooth and nail, guys. I mean, really to the 11th hour. In fact, it was about 2 a.m. when he was in fighting for this to ensure that we were able to get this done. And so what's going to create is this very revolutionary change of the tax code that's going to allow individuals, right, citizens, taxpayers across the country to donate to state-based scholarship granting organizations. States are going to have to opt in. We encourage every single state and every single governor to opt in, but you're going to be able to donate to these SGOs, which are then going to help provide scholarship for kids in the state. It's great for taxpayers because you can get up to a $1,700 credit right off your tax bill. It's great for students and families because they can get scholarships. It doesn't cost states a dime. There's no state dollars that are associated with this. They can stop with their wringing of the hands of, this is going to siphon all this money away. And we can get to really creating something pretty powerful across the country.
And again, this is the Federal Scholarship Tax Credit, formerly known as ECCA, Educational Choice for Children Act, but the Federal Scholarship Tax Credit. And so you all included this in your polling and asked people about it. And what'd you find?
Yeah, here's what we found. So when we initially asked right out the gate, and this is just to everybody on the poll, 58% in approval of this. And then when we started to give a little more information, that's when I talked at the beginning, it sort of jumped a little bit from 58 to 64%. Right out the gate, though. So if they had kids that were under 18, 66% of the parents that we polled were like, yes, we should have this thing. Let's get this going right away. Moved a little bit in the positive once we explained it a little bit more, about 2 percentage points, but they were already there and thought this was a good idea. And again, when you tell people, look, we've created a tax credit that you can donate to and get $1,700 off your tax bill and support kids in your state through scholarships, just what a great idea.
You mentioned over 30 states have programs in place right now. Unfortunately, in our country, we do have a red state, blue state divide. We had Illinois with a program, but the legislature killed it rather than renewing it, which is so unfortunate.
That's why sunsets, right, and dates where these things can fade out are just, right, they're terrible because they don't give families a chance to know they're going to be around, and they deserve to know that it's going to be there for them.
There definitely was widespread fallout from ending that program in Illinois. Okay, so again, red state, blue state divide, who has choice, who doesn't. Was any of that explored in the polling?
Let me tell you what I think is pretty interesting about when it relates specifically to the SGOs. And we asked about, should they be able to operate? And there's a lot of support for that. But what I find really interesting is, should your state participate? Right? Like, should your state opt in to be able to do this? And we're very early in the process. We're still waiting on the Treasury Department to set rules for this. So I think you'll see a real groundswell of states opting in the near future. Interestingly enough, a couple of governors very quick to say, no, we're not going to participate in this. And I don't even think we brought this up. What's really incredible about the way this is written is the scholarships have the applicability to be able to use for private school tuition, but it also mentions tutoring, curriculum, transportation, special needs services. So there really are ways in which these SGO scholarships can help kids across different makes and models. If you really are willing to pull the walls down and think about the end user in all this, which are the students, this is a good idea. But and we've seen for a long time, the walls are up and you've got, big schooling teachers unions running around with $3 billion a year in their coffers, and everything outside of that, traditional system is some sort of threat to their ecosystem. We've proven time and time again that's not the case. And when you sit and focus on how can this actually help students, the governor's going to look at this and say, but I could have public school students who'd be able to get some extra tutoring services. This is a really good way to be able to do that, as long as no one's excluded from the process, right? The intent of this is educational freedom to be able to provide families with options maybe outside of what they traditionally have. Can't lose sight of that either, though, because the idea of, well, we're just going to create public school SGOs, that's not the intent here, and that's not going to help serve kids. So here's what's pretty cool, though, when you ask about should our state participate. Obviously, Republican voters that were on the poll think that their state should participate. But it's sort of your conservative, moderate Democrats, 65% of them said they want their state to participate. Non-white Democrats, minority Democrats, 64% of them want their state to participate. Non-primary voters for Democrats, 67% want their state to participate. So when you get outside of sort of the traditional, maybe stronghold, very vocal, engaged Democrat voter, the other groups here really want their states to be able to participate. And it speaks to maybe being in a state where there aren't options like that. You think about California, New York, New Jersey, these other states, these sort of blue strongholds where they won't even pass the most modest of school choice programs. Something like this could be a real lifeline like they've never had before. And it's why it's worth exploring.
Right. So we might have a red state, blue state policy divide, but we don't have a red voter, blue voter policy divide.
Exactly. And I also think you're going to have some blue state governors who really do know this is the right thing to do, that are going to have the opportunity to do this. And, you could probably guess the states that I would mention, but you think about Pennsylvania, you think about Kentucky, Maryland. There are some places where I know these governors know it's the right thing to do. And we'll be very interested to see the way that that plays out here over the next few months. Obviously, we've advocated from the beginning, every state should opt into this because, again, Tony Evers, his commentaries is going to be catastrophic to our public schools. It's not impacting your state budget whatsoever. This is like free dollars coming in. The other question to ask, obviously voters want this, your constituents across your state want this, but let's say you don't opt into the federal scholarship tax credit. So now you're incentivizing your taxpayers in Wisconsin to send those dollars to Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, other states. Wouldn't you want to keep that in your home state? I think you would.
In a way, it's good that this program is not going to be enacted until the beginning of 2027 because we do have an opportunity to see how the rules unfold that are going to be underway soon by the U.S. Treasury Department, and to make sure that governors learn about polling results like this and make that correct decision.
Especially as they're, I think Wisconsin's got a gubernatorial race that'll happen between now and then. I know Michigan does, other states do as well. And so, there's time to educate about what this really is, how this really can benefit kids across your state, and then to also educate voters too about what these programs are and to be asking those questions. Okay, Governor, if you get elected, what's your plan for the federal scholarship tax credit in this state? I'd want to know that answer.
For sure, that question needs to be brought up many times over the next year. A couple more questions on the polling. So people might claim that the polling kind of pushed people to respond in a way that skewed the results in favor of education freedom. How would you respond to that?
No, I mean, look, it's about as good as polls can be, reputable source, done with safety and security online, sampling of Democrats, Republicans, independents. I mean, it's a broad voice, and that's not going to change the tone of what American families want. We've seen this in poll after poll. We're no anomaly here in the way in which we've worded things and even asked about open enrollment and the way in which we explain the way the tax credit will work. All that is clear and open and above board, and it's just a great way for families. Look, we showed initial support was there. Then when you explain it to them, it even grows. One of the biggest takeaways that we found from this, especially when we asked for commentary, was people talked a lot about what this will do for students, what this can do for kids in their state. Obviously, it's good for taxpayers, but the real focus that we got back in a learning moment was, but we really want to help students in our state. And this is something that can do that. These policies like vouchers, education savings accounts, opportunity scholarships, tax credits, those are good. Those can help students in our state. And then when specifically asked about the federal scholarship tax credit, well, you know what? This looks like something that can help kids in my state. And everybody likes that.
Any other findings to share?
No, I think we've hit it. I mean, I think it's another great opportunity to kind of look at in depth. It's the first time we've asked, from our standpoint, families specifically about the new federal scholarship tax credit. Mm-hmm. So to get some insights there, look, it affirms where we know where certain communities have been on this, but it also shows that we've got work to do to continue to fight for them. We've got to continue to fight for the marginalized and for those who don't have equal access to school choice. And if they're in a state, like I said, that won't even pass the most modest of school choice programs, or that'll let lifelines die, like in Illinois, we got to get in there with SGOs. We got to get their states to opt in. We got to do everything we can to convince their leaders that this is a good idea, that this doesn't have to be a partisan fight, so we can really help families out.
Well, for those of us who live in states that are far, far behind when it comes to school choice, I live in Virginia that has a tiny little tax credit scholarship program that nobody knows about. We're far, far behind. How do you suggest that we share these polling results with policymakers?
That's a great question. So look, I mean, empowerment is you having your voice heard, right? So taking these results, and we've got them all at federationforchildren.org. I'm at AFC Press on X. My DMs are open so we can send information to people as needed. The more that you go in with facts to be able to back up, not just I want this, or we feel this, or my friends say that, which is obviously it's great to have your voice heard, but to be able to show like really where these different subsets of their voters are. If you're talking to a Democrat leader, but look at the subsets of voters here that really are in support of this. Like, your message is not in alignment with the majority of people in your party. Yeah, there's a very vocal minority that, is screaming from the hills that school choice is the worst thing that could ever happen. We know that's not the case. And to show what the numbers bear out and show that people have their back on this, be courageous and step out and take a lead on what's right. And look, the teachers union is going to yell at you, but that's okay. We're in the business of combating that and helping you get through it. And we've seen that play out in states across the country where leaders have taken a strong stance on school choice, even leaders from the Democrat side of the aisle. It's what families want, and you're able to help get them over the finish line. And so, look, if we've got to fight the teachers union over it, that's fine. We've been doing that for a long time now.
Well, it does matter when we share these results. I had a meeting with a senior U.S. Senate staff member last week who brought the polling up. We didn't bring it up at the meeting. She'd
All right,
already
good.
she'd
I
already
like to
read
hear
it.
that.
She brought it up. She wanted to make sure that other staff members of the Senate heard about it as well. So the word is spreading. There's some
Great.
good news for you, Brian.
Good. I love to hear that.
You previously served as Executive Vice President of Parents for Educational Freedom in North Carolina. You shared a little bit about family's story there. Tell us a little bit about what's happened in North Carolina
Yeah.
with school choice. It hasn't been easy.
No, it hasn't been. And if you'll allow me to go down memory lane a little bit, it's life as a military kid is interesting. You move around a little bit and you kind of come and go to different places. We were very fortunate. When I was going into the fourth grade, we moved to Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in Goldsboro, and we got to live there for 6 years in a row, which is pretty rare in that kind of lifestyle. And our parents wanted my brothers and I to go to a small Catholic school, and we were able to do that. And fun fact is, there wasn't a spot for me in the fourth grade. I didn't know this till later. My mom told me, once I started getting involved in school choice, she's like, there wasn't a seat for you. And then a day before the school year started, one opened up. So we were all able to go to school together. I would have ended up there, I'm sure, eventually. But, this was the early to mid 90s, and there weren't any programs like this at all. And I remember classmates who really struggled. And one of my best friends in the fourth and fifth grade, his mother tragically passed away, and his dad was an auto mechanic. And man, they scraped by. And I'm sure the school community helped them ensure those two boys could stay in that school because it meant so much to them. And boy, if the Opportunity Scholarship Program had existed at that time, it would have been a lifeline for many more. And so that's just, it's always meant a lot to me. And then, to get involved with AFC and then also to then get the opportunity to kind of come home to North Carolina in 2016 and join PFNC and get the fight for families across our state has been, it's just been a blessing of a lifetime. When I joined Parents for Educational Freedom in 2016, we had a couple thousand families on the scholarship program. We were fresh off a lawsuit victory and, deemed constitutional by our state Supreme Court, rightfully so. And so, we saw consistent growth in the program, but we also had some issues. We had a scholarship that was capped at $4,200 and we had some income caps on it. And so we've been able to work very methodically, smartly, but also with intentionality to expand the program where today there are nearly 100,000 kids on opportunity scholarships in North Carolina. We've got a tiered system where based on family income, your award is then higher, right, for lower income families. So we've been able to keep the real heart of this, right, to ensure that those in the most need get the most support. In North Carolina, they're first in line. So the tier one families are first in line to get scholarships. They get the most amount, and then we tier it up to tier four, and then those families are able to get it as well. And it provides this universality in that, hey, look, we believe families should be able to tap into their tax dollars to go with their kid to the school of their choice, but it also ensures that families that need the most help get it. And to think about almost 100,000 kids on the program is, it's really amazing. And that's a lot of lives that have been changed, and just really honored to be a small part of it.
Oh, that's exciting. I feel like we need to schedule a separate conversation just about North Carolina.
I'm biased, right? Because I love so many states, but this really has become, my home state, and we're raising our family here now. And that's been incredible. What we've done in North Carolina from a parent standpoint, from a parent engagement standpoint, is really special. Yeah. And PFNC under Darrell Allison's leadership when he was the president, and now with Mike Long leading the organization, and even in the time when I was there, we really put a lot into building relationships with families. You think about those early days. That organization was founded in 2005. And the first 5 years was just building relationships and building trust. We didn't see a lot of movement in the legislature until 2010. We got a special needs tax credit. We got, cap removed off of public charter schools. And, 2013, 14, we finally got opportunity scholarships. So it's a long haul. It's a lot of work, but it's also a lot of building trust and building relationships and the secret sauce into what has made North Carolina so successful outside of a legislature over the last, 12 years who's really been helpful on this is a parent liaison team that's second to none that goes out there. It's moms helping moms and dads, and it's real relationship that gets it done. So shout out to Quan Graham, Allison Gunther, that whole team at PFNC, but that parent liaison team they're a special group.
Special group and a model for other states, for sure. So over the years, whether you were in North Carolina or in your various roles with AFC, you've heard some school choice myths, some education freedom myths. Is there one that maybe is your favorite or that bothers you?
Oh gosh, boy,
how do you want to tackle today?
You love all your kids, right? We've spent so much time really, for me over the last almost 10 years, working really on this solely, you've heard so many different things. The siphoning money away from our traditional public schools is one that I'm always happy to have that conversation. Because, in my home state here in North Carolina, the largest line item in our entire state budget, is for education and for traditional K-12 education. And that's probably the case in states across the country. And so this idea that the resources aren't there, you and I have both seen this graph that's shown over the last 10 years, how admin of K-12 schools has only increased, yet per pupil funding has stayed here. So it seems like we have the resources to be able to do it. Maybe it's an allocation issue, and we just get so focused on adults and buildings. I'll give you an example. Folks will often say, our public schools are, they're drowning. You guys are siphoning money away. I said, the superintendent in Wake County Public Schools, where I live, has a 2-year severance package of $600,000. Seems like the dollars are there. And so that argument of sort of siphoning money away, I can't stand it. It's so much divisive rhetoric. And then because when you say, well, don't you believe that families should be able to choose where their kids go to school? And, if they're paying property taxes, but not really leveraging that system, shouldn't they be able to get some of that back, to be able to follow their kid? And people are like, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. So we're always happy to have that one. Or, we've seen, you're subsidizing, private education across the country. Meanwhile, wealthy families paying the most in property taxes into a system that they're not leveraging. You could have that conversation on the other side of that. So there's always something. You've talked about it here. Go back if you guys didn't listen to when Tommy Schultz was on with you, maybe early this year. You guys had a real in-depth conversation about the size and scope of the unions. That really hit me. I mean, I didn't know that 3 billion number until he told it to you. And that was an eye opener. So we've got work to be done. But again, we see more and more people moving in this direction. This generation of parent has choice at a fingertip. They've got hundreds of apps and Uber Eats and Grubhub and all these different choices. Why would that not be the same in education?
How can people follow your work, Brian?
Sure. Well, we're at federationforchildren.org. School Choice Now is our social media handle. But if you want to follow what I'm doing from a press standpoint, I'm at AFC Press. And really what we tried to create specifically on X is this flow of news and information happening around school choice. But again, DMs are open. So if there are reporters listening or allies or even coalition partners that want to get in touch, you can just find me at AFC Press on X. Everything's open there. And just here to help continue to tell the great stories about how school choice are impacting families across the country and fight for more of it as we look for opportunities to expand it.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, thank you for your commitment to education freedom, and thank you for joining Freedom to Learn.
Thanks, Jenny.
Freedom to Learn is a production of the Defense of Freedom Institute. Learn more about our work at dfipolicy.org. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Send feedback, questions, and episode ideas to podcast@dfipolicy.org. And if you enjoyed today's conversation, please follow and review Freedom to Learn on your favorite podcast app and share it with a friend.